one of our family vacations, we had our Chevy Suburban loaded to the hilt. The back storage area was filled to the ceiling, and there was even a topper luggage carrier on top. It was strapped down. We really did take the minimal luggage, but items for 5 people were needed. Plus, coolers were filled with food. This was going to be over a week-long adventure. Within all this, I even squeezed in flotation devices for the ocean and items for barbecuing. The beach condominium that we rented stated that there was a common place to grill where you could use charcoal briquettes. So I brought the necessary items to grill with. Knowing this, I brought my grilling utensils, charcoal chimney, a little bit of newspaper, and my MAP gas torch. At our destination, later that night, we pulled out the barbecue supplies out of that rooftop luggage carrier, and I headed to the patio area. And there was already several other dads there, drinking their beers, of course, and they're out there fanning and blowing on their little charcoal briquettes, trying to get them to light. I loaded up my charcoal chimney with the briquettes, stuffed newspaper underneath it, and then I used my MAP gas torch and began lighting the charcoals. These torches produce a significant amount of noise from I guess you say, the turbulent moving of the mass air. The other dads immediately looked up and watched when they heard it ignite. There must be an unwritten guide code that declares what I just did was wrong. Because, they stared with me with disgust, because they're over there struggling in the heat. They're trying to light their own grills. Within a minute, I had a pretty good flame coming out of my chimney. And then, once they seen this, they weren't really interested in talking with me, which was fine. Even though they were there before me, I was basically grilling before them. And I was really almost finishing about the time they finally got their grill hot enough to cook on. I had no interest in standing on that uncovered hot patio, talking with them. That's why I had brought what I thought was a necessary item. Though the space was limited, I felt the charcoal chimney and MAP gas and all that was a must for this vacation journey. So something to think about, on your business journey. What are you going to bring along? What are you going to bring along on your business journey? For some reason, small business owners seem to be the worst at collecting and purchasing toys, expensive toys at that. They purchase things like motorcycles, boats, trucks. They like to go on elaborate vacations. They like to have all the nice equipment, bigger homes. And a lot of times they try to justify this or any of these expensive toys. They justify it maybe as a business expense or something. Bigger homes are nice, but, they must be, filled with furniture, heated, and, maintained. If you can afford to furnish it, heat it, cool it, keep the home looking great, keep the grounds looking great, well maintained, great, do it. But if you're barely making it, barely making the payment, you have bed sheets as window curtains, and you're stressed out and struggling to make the payments, and you're unable to really properly maintain the property, then maybe a smaller home would be wiser to own. Remember that owning a home, a personal home, costs you money, since there's no money being made from it, no rent. Now, there are some equipment that might be needed for the business, so you can get the work done more efficiently, so it allows more free time to relax, or maybe free time to go make more money. Just like, my charcoal chimney and MAP gas freed up time to spend with my family instead of spending with those drunk dads there on the really steaming, uncovered concrete patio, I felt that was a necessary thing to bring along. And this can be a dangerous road to navigate. Your poor business owner friends and maybe even your accountant will say, buy the new truck, buy the new equipment. It's a business write-off. But is it worth spending $40,000 of your profits or future revenues to save $10,000 in taxes? It might be. I do not know, but that's something you'll have to figure out. Do not forget to factor in, anytime you buy anything like that, personal property tax, insurance, maintenance. If a new piece of equipment is needed and there's money maybe on hand to buy it, then it might be the right time to purchase it, especially in a particular tax quarter to help lower your taxable amount owed. Something else to think about with equipment, is it cheaper just to rent this piece of equipment maybe once a week, once a month? Are you going $40,000 into debt because you don't have the $10,000 cash to pay your taxes? I've seen that. So are you buying that new piece of equipment as an ego trip so people think you're successful? Can this piece of equipment be used year-round? Or will there be months where the payments will still be due, but you're unable to make any money from it? If you do not have the money, should you be purchasing something so expensive? There are times when it makes sense to bring in good debt to your journey. Good debt is used as leverage to purchase an expensive piece of equipment that will make you money. And, basically it pays for itself. In this good debt scenario, the debt allows a business to purchase an expensive piece of equipment without taking, say, all of its cash out of the bank to purchase it. Just remember that good debt will hopefully feed you, while bad debt might eat you. Bad debt is usually brought about by purchasing things that do not bring any income or buying things that you cannot afford, such as vacations, motorcycles, boats, and for some reason, some people even add personal homes to that. Business owners, they're the worst for toys. Many will argue with this one, and they'll say, my motorcycle is my therapy session. Yeah, great, buy one, buy two, whatever. Just get one that you can afford, pay cash for it. Some will say, I need a nice home to entertain in. Great. If you need that, do it. But, does it need to be the size that you're thinking, or maybe even in the neighborhood that you're thinking? I've been in many nice homes that business owners owned, and they weren't necessarily enormous. My personal favorite is, I need a new truck. Do you really? If so, get one. Does it really need to be a brand new one? A new $80,000 truck. And then, of course, you got to have your custom aftermarket rims with it. Or would a $25,000 truck suffice? Would it make the same amount of money? Would a $10,000 truck do the same thing? Would a $10,000 truck do the same thing that an $80,000 truck would do? Just, be careful going into debt, especially new vehicles, because the moment you drive it away from the dealership, you will lose 20% of its value the first year. And you'll continue to lose probably 15% of the value each year after that. It might make financial sense, but cash on hand is a must for this route. Because these are expensive items to maintain, and they cost money to own. A lot of people just look at the payments. They're like, well, I can afford the payments. Well, Sometimes, any type of vehicle or equipment, new or used, you might get a lemon that's going to cost you a lot of money. Just because you're making that payment doesn't mean everything else is covered in it. And, so it could be a costly purchase for you. Just remember, this journey that you're on is your life. Is the stress of having the debt worth owning something newer or bigger? What if your income was cut in half randomly? This happened recently. Most business owners ran into this problem when COVID hit back in March of 2020. Many other customers were unable to buy their products or services anymore. Some of their customers kept purchasing, but began to pay their bills slower and slower. Some customers purposely kept on purchasing, but they didn't pay their bills, leaving the business owners with loss of product, loss of time, and no money received for it. With less money received each month, many business owners struggled to make their normal monthly payments and their outstanding debts. And, really, it caused some of them to lose their businesses. I had several friends that majority of their accounts, when that happened, they quit paying. And, can you go months without, a certain amount of revenue coming in? So remember, you're on this journey to reach your destination. So bring minimal luggage with you. And, I'm linking this luggage to minimal debt and burdens. Be careful with the glamour of toy ownership. If you can afford it, great, get it, purchase it, enjoy it. Don't feel guilty when people shame you for it. But if you're using bad debt to buy these things that really you don't need and can't afford, it will cause unneeded stress in your family and even possibly take the business down. So thanks for watching.